that were ignited by the Six-Day War. Dina, the feminist movement, was mentioned here by Sami Samocha. There was a feeling in Israel that you, the women, young soldiers as you were at the time, that you are only sort of girl soldiers, quote unquote, as if you were just sort of second-class citizens. And only later on, it was not only the soldiers, but women also in society were the same. You were a soldier, an officer during that war. Can you, when you try and reconstruct those memories, do you remember the change that was undertaken because of the war, really? I can't quite remember it. What I can say is that the trauma was not a gender trauma, as they are now called, the collective trauma of all of them, of all our society and women amongst them. I think that our soldiers, the girl soldiers in the Sinai, there was a syndrome described in books that I've read, which was the survivor syndrome. Girls and boys were together, and as someone who was in the 14th Brigade, and most of my friends were killed, the boy soldiers, and there was a terrible feeling of blame. After all, we were in the same place at the same time, and it could have happened to us, and yet we were really as if very protected as women. And there was an evacuation decree that we didn't command, that we didn't actually all obey. But my feeling was, and that the other girls as well felt, was that part of it was the fact that we were left and the others weren't, that we survived and they didn't, this kind of syndrome. So in other words, there was also a feeling of admiration and worship of the man, the soldier beforehand, the man soldier of the Israeli hero that was perhaps cracked during this war and destroyed. My mother was a Holocaust survivor, and for her, the admiration and worship of the IDF was as if a decree of her existence. That is what kept her going, to come to Israel and to stay here and not to go to the States and leave, the Czech Republic behind her. And the love of the army was something that was really part of our daily bread. And it was something that all of us felt, especially after the Six-Day War, which was such a wondrous victory. And on the 6th of October, to see that gap between that image and reality, well, I was in Ta'oz with my girl soldiers, and the feeling was at any moment everything's going to sort itself out. And I've been listening today to the speakers in the first session, for example, and I keep saying to myself, in fact, all of us thought that Hakol yeh beseder. We all thought that everything's going to be okay. And even, everyone, if we're talking about even the second lieutenant who was sitting in different areas, thought the same. And that was our overall feeling. And I transferred it in a very concentrated way, perhaps, to those bereaved families. There were those families. There were families that I was the only person who was allowed to go in. They did not allow anyone to go in. For example, none of the officers, the men officers, and only I was allowed in because I wasn't to blame for anything, because I was a woman. They didn't even allow the municipal army officer to come in after they found their missing son. And I kept hearing the word concept, and I think that till this very day I haven't received an answer to these questions and queries that I have, and I'm very disappointed that I haven't reached it today either.